Ho il piacere di introdurre Filipa Ramos, che vive e lavora come autrice ed editor a Londra, è nata a Lisbona, redattore capo di Art Agenda, curatrice del film program di Art Basel e co-curatrice di Vdrome, un programma di proiezioni di film d'artista. Filippa inoltre insegna a MRes Arts alla Central St. Martins di Londra e all'MA dell'Arts Institute di Basilea. Ha collaborato a Documenta 13 nel 2012 e a Documenta 14 nel 2017, insieme a Lucia Pietroiusti, che anche abbiamo la fortuna di avere con noi questa sera. Cura per la Serpentine Galleries la serie di simposi The Shape of a Circle in the Mind of a Fish. La sua ricerca e i suoi scritti, che si concentrano in larga parte sulle relazioni tra le specie, sono stati pubblicati su riviste e cataloghi internazionali. Inoltre ha curato Animals della Whitechapel Gallery MIT Press nel 2016. Prego Filippa.
Grazie Giovanna. Grazie Daniel, grazie a Lucia e Fiammetta per aver curato questa mostra estremamente bella che spero che tutti di voi avete guardato. È molto strano, mi sento di parlare in chiesa perché l'acustica è stranissima, quindi spero che sia comprensibile quello che dico. E come dicevo, le mostre sono sempre occasioni molto felici, molto privilegiate per produrre idee, produrre conoscenza e mettere insieme delle persone, quindi grazie per questa opportunità. Come avevo spiegato a Giovanna quando mi ha invitato, io non mi sento molto confortevole di parlare in italiano perché so che ogni tanto fa un po' ridere e anche se mi piacerebbe molto farvi ridere, l'intenzione non è ben quella, quindi tra poco passerò all'inglese. C'è traduzione simultanea, quindi se qualcuno ha più voglia di sentire in italiano, penso che potete prendere delle headphones per ascoltarlo. Prima di iniziare volevo semplicemente dire che è anche un enorme onore essere qui in occasione della mostra di Daniel, che stamattina stavo contando, sono quasi 8 anni che ho scoperto il lavoro di Daniel, che lui stava finendo di allestire per un progetto che aveva Artissima, tipo nel 2012 penso, che era il film che avete anche qui in mostra, 16 mm, e che è stato un inizio di un dialogo e di un interesse continuo per il lavoro, per le ricerche di Daniel, per il modo in cui ha sempre cercato di combinare con un'enorme eleganza formale le ossessioni, i metodi, le metodologie della ricerca scientifica, del pensiero ecologico con la sua pratica artistica, che è estremamente riuscita, e questa mostra è ancora un altro esempio del suo lavoro unico. E io qui questa volta vengo a rispondere e a iniziare a aprire un dialogo col lavoro di Daniel e con tutti quelli con cui sarò in conversazione, portando una specie che in generale, o una creatura che in generale non è molto, molto vicina alle foreste, che è un uccello particolare, si chiama Sula australiana in italiano, Gannet in inglese, e che per coincidenza è anche una passione, una storia che ho avuto l'opportunità nei tempi recenti di condividere con Lucia Pietroiusti e con Emanuele Cocci, che sono anche qui, quindi mi sembrava l'opportunità giusta di portare questo uccello estremamente simpatico tra di noi. Volevo chiedere se possiamo iniziare guardando un piccolo video che è in silenzio e poi continuiamo. Passa all'inglese, quindi. Prima di passare all'inglese spiego semplicemente 3 fatti. Come spero diventerà evidente, vi parlerò in 3 registri simultanei. Uno è una storia particolare di un individuo di questa specie della sulla australiana, che ha un nome, si chiamava Nigel. L'altro registro è una narrativa sul contesto ecologico, storico di questo individuo e del territorio che lui ha scelto di abitare. E il terzo registro è una serie di frammenti di un libro che è stato un riferimento e continua ad essere un riferimento per cineasti. Chris Marker lo considerava un'influenza fondamentale per il suo lavoro, per artisti e per altri scrittori, che è un libro che in italiano, se non sbaglio, si chiama L'invenzione di Morel, di Adolfo Bioy Casares. Quindi alcuni dei frammenti sono la versione inglese tradotta di L'invenzione di Morel. Gannets are large seabirds with a long neck, a fun appearance and an elegant flight. Adult gannets have white bodies with black flight feathers lining the trailing edge of their pointed wingtips and the central tail area. Their heads are buff yellow, with a pale blue bill rimmed in black and blue rimmed eyes with a black eye stripe. The term gannet originates from the Old English, ganot, which means strong and masculine, and which also gives the gander, which is a goose, its name. To gander, which is also a verb, is to keep close eye on something. Geese have excellent eyesight. They are watchful, inquisitive, and have strong territorial instincts, making them outstanding Gandians, if the verb existed. To gander literally means to stretch one's neck to see, which probably comes from the combination between the long neck of the geese and their guardian drive. To gander is to become a goose. Nigel is a male Australian gannet, and he didn't find anything strange in his companions, despite their lack of motion and their indifference to the heat, cold, sun, and rain. The precise black contour of their heads, wings, and tails, and the pale beige blush of their head looked exactly like his. Yet, the other gannets must have felt, smelt, and tasted different from him. They never groomed, they never changed feathers, their feet were always hidden, and they were outstanding ventriloquists, as the sounds they emitted didn't come from their beaks or throats. No pain or hunger affected them. They had a unique capacity to stay still in the same position. I actually find a certain fascination in watching these odious intruders. It has been so long since I had seen anyone. But there are times when I must stop. First of all, I have so much work to do. This place could kill even a seasoned Icelander, and I have not been here long. While studying gannets at the Farewell Spit in New Zealand, the nutritional ecologist Gabriel Markowski-Kaputska brought to light their refined feeding criteria. While hunting for food, mostly foraging on coastal fish schooling at the water surface and cephalopods, gannets prioritize nutrients over energy. They prey on what provides them and their chicks the most balanced diet. Gannets' fishing abilities are remarkable. Their strong neck muscles and the spongy bone plate at the base of their bill help them cope with the impact with the water, which allows them to plunge into the ocean at up to 95 kilometers per hour from up to 20 meters high. Sometimes they're less acrobatic and they simply follow trawlers and other fishing boats to pick up undiscarded fish. Fast food isn't solely a human affair. In Britain and South Africa, a gannet also means a voracious and a greedy eater, a glutton. Gannets prefer herrings, such as sardines, to other fish. In case of scarcity of herring, they switch to anchovies. Since these other fish aren't as rich, individuals raise their consumption to guarantee their necessary calorie intake. Gannets only gannet to fulfill their needs. Consuming more implies fishing more and fishing for longer, which affects breeding success. In general, gannets only manage to rear a single chick to optimum fleeting mass per annual mating season. So food supply has a considerable impact upon breeding. In the lack of herring, gannets work harder, eat worse, have shorter procreation time, and provide their offspring with poor food. The life of a gannet in times of environmental complications is familiar to many other life forms, animal and non. The fish hooks, spears, and animal remains found in Manna, this coastal island off the coast of Wellington in New Zealand, attest the presence of humans since the 14th century. In the early 1820s, Ngaitoa people from Waikato cultivated kumara, which is sweet potato, on the island. In the 1830s, European settlers started occupying Manna. They established a whaling station and continued the agrarian process initiated by the Maori, replacing the island's fauna and flora with pasture for sheep. Wool from Manna was among the earliest exported from New Zealand. Mice collaborated with the settlers in transforming Manna's ecology and extinguishing the takapu, the island's gannets. In fact, the Anthropocene is a term that fails to take into account the complex trans-species cooperation systems that act upon the transformation of the planet. Human stories are animal, plant, and bacterial stories too. In 1978, most of the sheep of Manna had to be cooled due to an outbreak of scrapie. In 1986, the last cattle were removed from the island. In the 1990s, the mice were the last human-introduced animals to be entirely eliminated. The forest canopy started to be restored through an immense replanting program, which was part of a governmental conservation plan to restore Manna to its pre-agrarian state. Between 1987 and 2008, over 500,000 trees were planted. The island vegetation is abundant. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter plants, grasses, and flowers overtake each other with urgency, with more urgency to be born than to die, each one invading the time and the place of the others in a tangled mass. Gannets are closely related to another bird, a bobby or booby, the better-known relatives. The sociable and tame nature of these birds make them an easy prey, hence their name, from the Spanish bobo, fool. Boobies make people laugh because they look funny and they sound funny. A French marine biologist once told me he couldn't think about boobies without laughing. Peculiar, risible, homonymous words make good mnemonic devices. The blue-footed boobies have incredibly blue feet, thanks to pigments obtained from their diet of fatty bluefish. A sexually selective trait, the brightness of the boobies' feet may decrease with hunger or with age. Females periodically assess their partner's feet color to verify their health and their status. During mating season, Male boobies display their feet by lifting them up and down around the female bird in an admirable dance that also involves sky-pointing movements. Blue-footed boobies are monogamous, but they can also be bigamous. Gannets, instead, establish monogamous and long-term bonds, and pairs may remain together over several seasons until one member dies. This can be a disappointment for those who search for moral examples in nature. Manna was gazetted as a scientific reserve in 1988. Hoping to attract real birds, in 1997, conservationists installed a colony site made of 100 concrete gannets on the island, complemented with white painting dropping to simulate guano. In December 97, 2 birds landed among the decoys on the day, and in March 98, 1 bird was seen there at night. In 1999, a solar-powered sound equipment emitting Gannet calls was installed. Gannets make agitated, continuous shrieking sounds. Published in May 2010, the Manna Island Ecological Restoration Plan read, "There are no records of birds ashore subsequent to 98, and the site is now overgrown. The decoys were repainted by the Friends of Manna in 2009, but are now largely obscured by vegetation. Efforts to prepare a new site began in March 2010. Nigel joined the colony in 2015. He was the first gannet to settle there in 40 years. Soon after he started courting one of the concrete birds, he bought materials to her to make a nest. He groomed her body, sang and chatted for her. He did this for 3 years, day after day. She watches the sunset every afternoon. From my hidden place, I watch her. Yesterday, and again today, I discovered that my nights and days wait for the sour, the woman with its gypsy sensuality and the large, bright-colored scarf on her head, is a ridiculous figure. But I still feel, perhaps I only half believe this, that if she looked at me for a moment, spoke to me only once, I would derive from those simple acts the sort of stimulus a man obtains from friends, from relatives, and, most of all, from the woman he loves. Gannets are of the genus Morus, a term derived from the ancient Greek moros, the being of impending doom that drives mortals to their deadly fate. In the Greek mythology, Morus is the offspring of Nyx, the daughter of Chaos, the first created being and the primeval goddess of the night. Morus' siblings are the Morai, or the Fates, 3 weaver goddesses who sign the destinies of the living in their loom. Mulberries are also from the genus Morus, a different one though. The taxonomic name of Australasian gannets is a classical case of Chinese whispers distortions. On the 24th of December of 1769, during Captain James Cook's first expedition to the Pacific, the young naturalist Joseph Banks shot 3 Australasian gannets in the 3 Kings Islands in New Zealand. Since it was Christmas Eve, the birds were turned into a Pacific version of a goose pie and served to the crew on the 25th of December. Daniel Solander, a Swedish naturalist, and Carl Linnaeus Apostel, who had also joined the expedition, wrote a description of the birds, noting how they differed from the northern gannet, which abounds in Scotland and in the north of the UK. He initially named them Pelecanos chrysocephalos, golden-headed pelican, before changing it to Pelecanos sectator, a Westocentric remark on the perceived segregation of the animals. Sidney Parkinson, who was also on board of James Cook's Endeavour, was the first European to visit Australia, New Zealand, and Tahiti. He made a drawing of the bird with the caption P. sectator, later misread as P. serator. In 1843, the zoologist George Robert Gray, who was the head of the ornithological section of the London British Museum, which is now known as the Natural History Museum, called the Australasian gannet a Morus serrator. In January 2018, 3 more gannets arrived and settled in Mana. Living up to the title Pelicanus sectator of his ancestors, Nigel didn't pay much attention to them, remaining close to his elected stone companion. A few weeks later, Nigel died, alone, surrounded by his concrete companions, his warm white and orange body forever joining theirs. Anyone would surely believe we were in love and completely dependent on each other. Perhaps the weakness of my eyes makes the scenes appear this way. In any case, it is consoling to die while watching such satisfactory results. Nigel, the gannet, believed in art. He believed in cinema. He believed in love. His story, written across human and animal agencies, is a node to the possibilities of regeneration. By deciding to be part of the Mana colony and committing to one of its members, Nigel opened way for the reconstitution of a terrain and became an important author for the future of this island. With his life story, Nigel is showing us that the plural forest, or the plural rainforest, which is an ecosystem that is so important for Daniel's Imaginarian work, and which is at the basis of this encounter. And so Nigel is showing us that the plural forest begins in the heart. Thank you.